As the U.S. Senate negotiates a $1 trillion budget resolution in Washington, Democrats in California are in the final stretch of a recall election that risks their hold on the governor's mansion. Here to talk about this busy week in politics, our Politics Monday team, Amy Walter of the Cook Political Report and Tamara Keith of NPR. And it is so good to see both of you on this Monday. Thank you for being here. So let's start out with talking about what I was talking to Senator Bernie Sanders about, Amy, and that is this mega spending bill, $3.5 trillion. He says he's sticking to his guns. He's already compromised. Where does it stand?
It stands not with Senator Sanders, but with Senator Manchin. And when you only have 50 votes in the Senate, your ability to get something passed on a party line vote rests with the one who is the most at risk. And the most at risk senator right now is Joe Manchin, who has said out loud multiple times, we're not doing $3.5 trillion. I think the bigger challenge right now for Democrats, though, as they're thinking about this process is everything we've talked about has been the price tag. We've talked very little about the policy underneath it. And I think for Democrats who are talking about selling this in the next election in 2022 or beyond, right now, what they're talking about is all kinds of different things within it. We heard Senator Sanders talk about, right? Making the rich pay their fair share, income inequality. But what is it tangibly? It hasn't really been defined yet by that. And Republicans then have the opportunity for these next few weeks and probably throughout the campaign in 2022 to define it by that number, right? This is just more money going out of Washington, right? It's whether it's socialism, whether it's this is why the deficit's so large or why inflation's going up.
But Tam, you could argue the president has tried to talk about it. Senator Sanders has tried to talk about it. The president's out there in California today talking about we're going to fix the environment with this, among other things.
Yes, certainly President Biden has been pitching what they call the Build Back Better agenda, which, you know, I think that a lot of the conversation about it, as Amy says, has gotten bogged down in the process. Oh, it's a reconciliation bill. The reality is that if they are able to pass something and it has things in it that matter to people, then they will have something to talk about. But if they don't pass anything, then they won't. And Senator Sanders, I think in his interview, also seemed to say Democrats aren't going to let nothing happen.
Right.
So at some point, something's going to have to give. But it seems like Democrats are very motivated to have something. And they know that the window of time to do this is not that wide, because once you get into 2022, that is an election year. The endangered members of Congress and members of the House are going to start thinking about their futures, and it gets much harder to do it.
Yeah, I agree. We're at the place where it's too big to fail, basically.
And we'll see what not nothing looks like.
That's
yes.
Right.
The other reason the president, Amy, is in California is to do a visit to show his hand for Governor Gavin Newsom, who is facing a recall vote coming up tomorrow.
Yep.
And people have been voting, but it comes to a head tomorrow. What are you watching from this? What could the parties learn from this?
Yeah, you know, it's been very interesting. Part of the reason that Newsom was imperiled at all was his handling of COVID, and specifically his decision to go and hang out with a bunch of wealthy lobbyist types at a really fancy restaurant in the Bay Area, when he's telling everybody else in California, hey, you got to wear a mask or all these businesses were shutting down. That anger then turned into all the other troubles that the rest of the country is having, right, with the Delta variant and more shutdowns. But over the last few weeks, Newsom and Democrats have been able to actually turn COVID against Republicans. The front runner on the Republican side, named Larry Elder, has come out against mandates for vaccines and for masking, which in a state that has an 80% vaccination rate, that's not a popular position. And so you have everybody from this president to former President Obama to other major Democratic figures saying, voting against Gavin Newsom is literally dangerous to your health. So using the nationalizing COVID but in a way that helps a sitting governor.
And it's not for lack of challenges. There's something like 46 of them.
Yes. However, that's not nearly as many challengers as there were in 2003
Right.
when then Governor Gray
right.
Davis faced a recall. And sadly, Gary Coleman is no longer with us to run again in this recall. But there are a lot of challengers. One thing that is missing, though, is that was there in 2003 that I think hurt Gray Davis, that Governor Newsom has been able to avoid, is of the options on question 2, the people that could be picked, there really is no major credible Democrat. There is a YouTuber that has generated some buzz among younger voters who is a Democrat, but otherwise it's mostly Republicans, which again has allowed Newsom and Democrats to nationalize this election, say it's a Republican power grab, say it's just Trump Republicans out to get us. There are other different dynamics too. Despite all of Gavin Newsom's troubles, he's actually above water. His popularity is above 50%,
Latest
while
polls.
Gray Davis was below 30%.
Yeah.
So we will
wait and see.
there.
Yeah,
But
and
the
it will
num-
probably
but
take.
it looks good.
But it does. There's both the polling and then, as you said, this is mostly mail-in ballots.
Right.
We've already had more than 7 million ballots cast. Democrats were having early on, the polling was picking up an enthusiasm gap. They have definitely come and turned out, and it's much more polarized today than it was in 2003. There were a lot of Democrats in 2003 who voted for the recall. Right.
And for Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Arnold
because he was
Schwarzenegger.
moderate in a way
Different.
that Elder is not.
Different in so many ways. Hard to get people in California to pay attention to elections, and
Fair.
sometimes in many states, so not just picking on California. But last thing I want to quickly ask you about, over the weekend, 9/11, some very somber, solemn remembrances of that terrible day in the history of this country 20 years ago. Tam, one that stood out to me was former President George W. Bush, Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Here's just an excerpt of what he had to say.
There is little cultural overlap between violent extremists abroad and violent extremists at home. But in their disdain for pluralism, in their disregard for human life, in their determination to defile national symbols, they are children of the same foul spirit, and it is our continuing duty to confront them.
Children of the same foul spirit. He's talking about the January 6th insurrectionists, even though he didn't name it, and what happened on 9/11.
He's drawing a direct line, and certainly Flight 93 was thought to be aimed at the nation's capital, and January 6th truly did attack the Capitol building. A lot has happened in those 20 years. It has been an incredibly difficult 20 years for this country with a recession and wars and now this pandemic. But the words from the former president also indicate just how much things have changed. That what he is saying was sort of a mainline idea, or at least an ideal, probably not realized 20 years ago. But now it's almost controversial, at least in some parts of his own party.
Yeah, and but his position about domestic terrorism versus terrorism abroad is also reflected among many Americans, right? In the NPR PBS NewsHour poll, more Americans said they were worried about extremism in the United States than from abroad. And then there was an AP poll also out in August, same thing, where a larger percentage of Americans said, I'm much more worried about what's going on here than being attacked by extremists from overseas. And yes, to Tam's point, it is, this moment we had in 9/11, this moment we thought was going to be unity, and instead we've seen all of these other big events lead us to more polarization.
Solemn.
Very.
Amy Walter, Tamara Keith, thank you both.
You're welcome.